Good day fellow woodworkers, my name is Thomas and you're watching Casual DIY channel. In today's video we'll be continuing with the build of my workbench, and in particular we're going to be doing the flip top. Check out the video. If you haven't seen part 1 of the build of this bench, I'm just gonna link it up above and obviously down below in the description section. So if you're interested in this particular build, check out part 1 so you know more or less where we are, and then jump into this video. I was debating in my head how to set up the top of my workbench for the longest of times, and in the end I came up with this idea. I'm going to cut two pieces of plywood that will be the left and the right parts of the workbench, and I'm going to secure them independently. Now the reason for that, when the top is going to get damaged or scratched or whatever, which happens quite a lot in my workshop, may I add, it's then easier to actually switch the top. Rather than buying a full sheet, I can just buy a half a sheet or whatever, or even from my leftovers, and just change a part of the top. So I think in this case that's going to be the best idea. Hence, as you already seen, I made the marks where I'm going to cut the top into two pieces, and as you can see I'm using my table saw to rip down the board. Okay, so it's time to talk about how we're actually going to be designing the flip top and how it's going to work. First of all, we need to actually design and make the swivel base around which we'll build a box that will house the top that will be flush to the rest of the bench when the mitre saw is not in use, and obviously the part where the mitre saw sits on, but when the mitre saw is actually in use, it will be flush to the top of the table. So obviously it's going to be quite a tricky task to make sure that both of the sides are flush with the top of the table of the workbench. So first of all, what we need to do is to make the base for this metal pipe I'm using. By all means, I'm not using any groundbreaking techniques. They already, I've watched a lot of videos on YouTube how people make their flip tops, and this is basically what I came up with. That will be our base onto which the mitre saw will be attached, obviously from the other side. In the middle we're gonna have the metal pipe going like so. I already marked up, as you can see, the middle of the board. Then what we're going to use, two boards like so to sandwich this in place. Obviously the thickness, I already cut them to the right size. The thickness must be exact same thickness as the pipe, so there is no movement at all. That's very important that the metal pipe stays in place. And obviously two more boards to make sure everything stays square and obviously it's sturdy. So that's the principle of it. Later on I'm just going to add some strips going across here as well. On top of this I'm going to put another board like so that will hold everything together. Just before we continue with the build, if you're not a subscriber, please consider subscribing to my channel. It really helps me a lot, and press that bell notification button so you don't miss any of my future videos. But let's continue with the build. Right then, so we've got the base complete and now we need to build the box around it. Now the tricky part is to make sure this actually the size of it is equal from both sides, and what I mean by that is the distance from the middle of the metal pipe to the top of the mitre saw, and then to the top that will be on this side as well. If they're not equal, they will not be flush with the table. So the next step is just making the sides for this box. To get the measurement for the correct size of the side for this box, we need to measure the base of your mitre saw times 2 plus the thickness of the rotating base that we already built. That's the height of the sides that we need to make. Now we need to find the center of these boards so we can pre-drill some holes for the pipes. That will ensure the boards will go onto the flip-top card right in the center. And now it's time to install the sides around the flip-top base. Right then guys, so I started to measure up where to attach the flip top and I made an error. And unfortunately the metal bar comes on more or less, I don't know, maybe 3/4 down of the base of the leg over here. So basically the leg is in the way. I was hoping, well, my calculations initially were that the metal bar was actually going to be resting on these, on the legs, hence I've actually made them. But now they're more a problem than a solution. So the only solution I can think of at the minute is basically cut out this section of the leg of the support here and obviously then just continue as normal. So unfortunately, you know, that's one of the things when you don't measure correctly. Always remember, measure twice or even 6 times and you're gonna avoid mistakes like this. As you can see, I've cut out the piece of timber from the frame and now I'm just gonna attach this piece of plywood that will act as a support for the whole mechanism that will hold the metal pipe to the frame. And now it's time to drill the holes for the metal pipe. Obviously I've measured everything hopefully correctly and I'm going to be using a Forstner bit to cut out a hole. The Forstner bit is actually about 3 or 4 millimeters bigger than the pipe itself. The reason for that, we're going to build an additional plate that will be going behind this piece of plywood with a hole that's exactly the same size as the pipe, and I'm going to be using bolts to secure it correctly in place. Now all of them will have a bit of movement to them, so we can adjust the height of the table correctly right to the last millimeter to make sure it's actually the flip top is flush to the top of the table. Right then, so I've got the bolts threaded through and that's the 2 adjustment pieces that I'm going to use to adjust the height of the flip top. Obviously it's going to go from outside. Right, so let's give it a go. I'm going to put the flip top in now and we'll start adjusting it to make sure it's absolutely perfect with our tabletop. So as you can see, I'm ready to level the flip top with the rest of the tabletop, and I'm quite lucky to actually have these parallel clamps from Bessie. The nice feature of it is you can reverse the jaw and have the pressure going outwards, and as you can see it, I'm using it to lift the whole mechanism on each side to make the flip top absolutely spot on and level. a bit of a test fit, and it all matches perfectly. Okay, now it's time to finish building the box around the flip top. After that, we'll be installing the mitre saw. As we check that everything fits correctly, now we need to make sure basically the flip top stays in the exact glaze. To do that, as you can see, I'm pre-drilling the metal pipe and I'm just going to screw it into the base. And it's finally time to install the sliding mitre saw onto the flip top. Already all measured up where the mitre saw needs to be, so I'm just going to mark it where the hole's going to go. And now I just pre-drilled the holes for bolts of this description. They're quite long, obviously, to make sure they're actually going to go through the base of the flip top so we can secure it correctly. From the other side of the flip top, I'm just making the holes larger so I've got an easier access to the bolt. I had to raise the mitre saw to be absolutely flush with the top of the table, so I've made some platforms from plywood basically, and now the base of the mitre saw is absolutely perfectly flush with the both sides of the table. So now I'm just going to lock the screws from underneath, and then we'll just continue with making the nice box around the frame. I'm just cutting the front panel and the back panel for the box using my table saw. To make sure everything's level, nice and square, I'm actually using two clamps at the bottom, as you can see, to make sure the back panel is where it needs to be. Right then guys, so the mitre saw is attached to the flip top. Everything's working fine. One thing I have to mention, when I've installed the fronts from both sides, obviously, I had to cut that back beam a little bit down, probably about, I don't know, 4 centimeters, because it was obstructing the way of the flip top movement. But other than that, no major problems, which is always good. Now we're going to sort out the other side of the flip top, where it's just going to be a bench basically. So in the middle we need to fill that in. I've cut out some pieces of plywood. I'm just going to use my pocket hole jig to make some pocket holes, and we'll attach it that way. Before I proceed with installing the tops for the flip cart and obviously the rest of the workbench, I'm just going to install this latch system that I'm going to use to hold the flip top in place when it's in use on either of the sides. Before I install the worktools, I'm just going to give all of them a 45 degrees chamfer, just a small one, just to make sure that I'm not going to catch and damage the edges. And now it's finally time to attach all the tops. And there you go guys, finally managed to complete the flip top for my workbench, and I'm really happy how it turned out. It's absolutely dead flat with both of the sides of the workbench. That was the main concern for me, if I will be able to actually do that. And yes, it's working fantastic. Later on, something that probably I'm going to change or add is the two locking pins I've got. I'm probably going to add one on each side, so I'm going to have 4 in total. At the minute there is no movement at all, but I'm concerned that over the time, and only cheap, they're probably going to damage themselves or whatever, so I'm going to add 2 more to start with. Not sure if you've got any ideas and suggestions how to secure the flip top, let me know down in the comments. At the minute it's holding fire, as I said, there's no movement. And there we go, mitre saw ready in action. And again, the top of the mitre saw is actually 1 millimeter over the tops, and that's what I wanted to achieve as well, so I'm really pleased with that. and yeah, it works fine. All the bevels, this mitre actually goes to 50 degrees on each side, so no issues in achieving any angles on this mitre saw. And obviously when the slide is released, I've got plenty of space to actually move it, as it is quite a large mitre saw, so I've got no problems with that. And the handy thing is I can just lock it in place and it stays like that. Right then guys, so for this video that's all. The flip top build is now completed, but obviously that's not the end of building my ultimate small workshop workbench. So if you're not a subscriber, please consider subscribing and pressing that bell notification button so you won't miss any of my future videos on transforming this workbench into the ultimate small workshop workbench. There's quite a few interesting projects still to come with regards to this, so make sure to stay tuned. But for now guys, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you on my next woodworking adventure. Till then, take care.